Hello, this is the Bush Whisperer coming at you from Cape Gullis, Cape Town, Seaforth, Simonstown. I'd like to talk to you today about something I've noticed that is totally misunderstood by probably 90% of the so-called teachers in the spiritual field. This is the problem when people read too many books and they don't have real teachers, they don't have real gurus, they don't have real fraternities or organizations that they join where they can gain the actual insights of thousands of other students which have stood upon the shoulders of other students in order to gain an insight and the understanding of the true sacred mysteries and the knowledge. You've probably heard a lot of people referring to psychic phenomenon and spiritual phenomenon of the astral and the etheric as if it's the same thing. Right? Well, wrong. It's not. They are so different. In fact, one could say they're exactly the opposite. That would be a more accurate way of understanding and looking at such phenomena. So I'm going to try and break it down for you. I'm going to try and make it short, sweet, to the point, direct. If we consider reality, we need to put it into perspective. And the easiest metaphor is a bouncing ball. Imagine a ball bouncing. The drop of the ball is the astral, and it is creating and forming. It makes contact with reality, and it bounces from the floor. That is the etheric, as the metaphor goes. Now, you might notice that in the Western tradition, they speak about the tree of life, and they speak about how the energy descends down the left side of the tree. On the right side if you're looking at it, but if you back into it, it's the left side. And that the energy ascends at the right side of the tree. And you might notice that when you consider Vedic systems, they speak about Ida and Pingala. And the Ida is the descending force, and that it is cool. And that the ascending force is the Pingala. And they consider it as warm because it is being attracted back towards the spiritual realities. So what does this mean, actually? Well, the Ida is essentially managed and reflected in the physical body by what we call the pituitary gland. And the Pingala is the pineal gland. And when we consider the reflections of the pituitary gland, it is reflecting emotions. In this world, it seems as if it's cool, right? So they speak about emotions as being watery. But we've got to understand that the firmament is a reflection. And in the firmament, all things are polarized. So when we're talking about emotion in its emotional state, it's fiery, it's hot. That's why when you get emotional, you feel hot in your body. And when they speak about the mind, this in terms of the Manipura extension, they speak about it as being hot, because from this world, it's active. And because it's active, they consider it as if a fiery principle, not passive. Water is passive. But when we consider it in its own form, in its own space, it's actually very much cool. Hence you say cool, calm, and collected. You notice when you look at a diagram of Shiva, you'll see the eye. You'll see the water, Ganga, coming out of the head. It's cool. Nandi, all symbols of cool symbols, cool metaphors. So let's consider for a moment the astral. The astral you can think of as the form of energy. There's a beautiful little mantra that you can consider it with. So it is a pure energetic state, but it is expressing form. It is the form of energy itself. And within energy, we see the archetypal structures and the concepts that arise from the archetypal structures that produce the currents that we notice in the astral planes. And in the astral planes, things are very formative in terms of they can take any form that you feel or imagine at any point. And this is a descending ray that comes from the sphere of consciousness into the sphere of the physicality. Although it's not that simple, but that's an easy way to consider it in terms of conceptual understanding and alignment. So you have these astral currents coming in to the body, and you have these etheric currents bouncing back up. And the etheric currents are the exact polarity of this. So now we're talking about the energies that connect the forms, the structures of the physical plane. So instead of the form of energy, we're looking at the energy of form. Can you see the polarity there? It's quite simple. And when we look at the etheric current, it is the rising current, and it holds the structures of this world. So when one enters into the etheric state of consciousness, then one is experiencing, and this is when one is meditating on the Svadhisthana, or the Tantin, or the Hara, Japanese, whichever route you take, you're going to experience the etheric planes if you are able to concentrate deeply enough to project your consciousness from this body. There are three bodies in the Astral, in the shamanic law. We have the etheric body, we have the astral body, and we have the pure vibrational body. The vibrational body is the body of the Shashumna. That's the body of the central pillar. That's the spiritual body, the true spiritual body. Though all of these are essentially manifestations of the spirit, though we have to consider the etheric as being a reflection of the physicality, and hence in the word etheric, ether, it comes from the old language structures which are structuring the beginning and the ending. Protoic Hebrew, it's eth, that's the first and the last letter. So the beginning and the ending of things, Eric, that is the flow of the currents of the beginning and the ending, as we've reflected here. But the astral comes from the roots of ash, which is where the word ash comes from today. So ash has got to do with the fiery principle, and it's got to do with how ash is produced from fire. From fire, which is a purely energetic state, there is arising this ash as a metaphor, which reflects the metaphors that we've so far expanded upon. So to understand the differences between the etheric and the astral is to understand a very abstract astral reality that doesn't follow the rules of the matter that we see here, but informs it. And to follow the currents of the etheric is to consider the forms of this particular matter and the structures of this reality, and to understand the actual energetic dynamics of this reality as it is structured. Hence, when we travel in the etheric space, or through the etheric vision, observe this reality, we see a world which is much the same as this world. And this is what most people talk about when they talk about the astral. It's very sad. And these are so-called masters and teachers that are teaching about this. Even Vedic masters, so-called gurus, are talking like this because they just don't know any better. They don't understand English, and they haven't been trained in the Western tradition. So they can't understand which particular Vedic corresponding verbs and nouns are corresponding to these particular structures that we are discussing. When we speak about the astral, we are speaking about a totally unformed, unstructured reality that responds to thought and emotion, is informed by emotion, and thought is the product. So emotion informs this world, and the reaction to emotion, thought. So as we are informed by our feelings, we reach out and structure with our thoughts. So we can understand that from our perspective, feelings, we become passive to our emotions. We're not talking about passions, because there's another thing that the Vedic teachers tend to confuse, because they don't really understand. The emotions have to move through another frequency of being in order to be translated into passions. And passions means pass ions, the passing of ions. When the emotions have crossed the threshold, and by the threshold we are talking about that void or vacuum that separates the waters above from the waters below. So we're talking about the firmament. When the vibrational frequency reaches across the firmament, there's a polarization and a juxtaposition where everything inverts or reverses. To understand this is to see this. And you can only see this when you are able to actually project your consciousness into the astral and look back at the physical. Or when you're in the etheric looking at the astral, because there is an overlay between the two. So most people begin their journeys in the etheric and they slowly go into the more subtle realms of the astral. But it is possible to project directly into the astral, though it's possibly more dangerous. So, I hope so far you're with me, because this is quite important to understand the distinctions between these two. The etheric is how we structure and how we manifest the experience of reality, though the astral is what we receive as the blueprint for the experience of reality. And these two have to be balanced within the brain and in the body in order for the total experience of reality to exist, which is essentially both of these working in symbiosis and in synergy. So when we speak about the currents of Ida and Pingala, there we got a clear idea of what we're actually speaking about. We're speaking about two aspects of reality, and I shall inform you that these two currents come out of the sun. Yes, two currents. Think about it. Double slit experiment. There is one very abstract ray emitting from the sun, which we call a wavelength. And there is a more objective ray emitting from the sun that we call an electron. And so you can see that everything works in total synergy, as above, so below. And as above, so below is actually relating to these two currents. And when we're looking at the Merkaba, we are looking at these two, the astral and the etheric, being held in check. The one revolves one way and the other one revolves the other way. Can you see how it's just repeated? Whichever aspect of the occult and esoteric knowledge we look at, we see the same reflection. So please, in future, when you hear somebody speaking about the etheric and they're saying that the astral and the etheric is the same, don't stop there and go, oh, it's nothing. Realize that their understanding is totally marred. They have no idea of what they're talking about. Because to say that they're the same thing would be able to say that red is blue or yellow is violet. Sorry, red is green or yellow is violet or blue is orange, because these are all complementary colors. And these three sets of complementary colors each relates to three aspects, which is the three fundamental aspects of creation being reflected in these two respectively. I didn't want to make this a particularly long message, but I thought it was fundamentally important for us to gain an insight and understanding to the difference between the etheric and the astral currents, because there will be times when I'm speaking and I'll be mentioning these two, and it's important that you understand what I mean, because they are not the same thing. They are as different to each other as chalk is to cheese. And another thing to understand is the etheric currents are essentially the vibrating, energetic realities that we experience in the body. And so we can develop etheric vision. And etheric vision is actually a physical component of the eyes that we can develop. And the etheric component of gold is a resonant frequency, which is why gold is used in jewelry, why it's so important for technology, got to do with the way it operates through electrical cycles, you see. Once again, we're talking about the etheric components here. And the astral components, the astral vision, is that internal vision, which we can call the dream vision. So you can say that dreams arise from the astral plane, and in order to experience dreams, we have to become passive, so that the dream can act into us. And in order to experience the opposite of the dream, which is the rational thinking process, we have to become active. And we need to respond to the dream, which is carried in a subtle form of emotion through the awareness, the subconscious, the emotion of energy, which is translated through the firmament to the passing of ions, the passions. And these passions move through our bodies as the emotions move through our minds. So emotions don't move through the body, passions move through the body. But passions are informed by emotions. And in the same way, we experience thoughts moving through our body. But the thoughts are related to the concepts. And the concepts are related, once again, to the rising current. So we've got this element of vibrational frequencies that are working in this way up the spine. This is how we consider the Idam Pingala. And that's a metaphor for how intertwined these two really are, which is why many people that speak about them think of them as the same thing, because they haven't actually realized that there are two separate things working together and that they are two sides of one coin. So you can consider everything as being one, everything as being singular, everything as being a reflection of the total unity. However, it's not that simple, because the unity has to divide and polarize in order for it to become. So these divisions and polarities are fundamental, and they follow through all the realms of the astral and the etheric. And this is essentially the polarity of being expressed through astral and etheric. And the etheric you can think of as the lower sphere as it rises, and the astral you can think of as sort of the higher sphere as it falls. Not that lower and higher have any moral distinctions or ethical distinctions to them. We're speaking in terms of conceptual, and we're conceptualizing this physical reality as the feet, and we're conceptualizing the mental, pure supramental reality as the head, just for the sake of the metaphor. So up and down is relating to these concepts. I hope this has been useful in giving you an insight to what the etheric and astral are. I will speak in depth about the etheric and the astral at a later stage, but I thought it was prudent to share this with you. It's so sad that you've got so many people out there talking about spirituality, and they haven't even figured out the first thing about the most basic element of the spiritual reality, which is this. If you don't understand this, you don't understand Idam Pingala, you don't understand the currents of the Etzchim, the tree of life. One can't understand the difference between the falling force and the rising force. The true elemental reality of the sphere of water and the sphere of fire will be lost, because everybody will be mixing them up. And this is essentially what's happened in the spiritual reality and in the spiritual field. So I thought to share this with you in order to produce clarity, so that we can all find a sense of equilibrium in our thinking. And from this can be deduced real and true understanding, which can mature into a solid form of wisdom. And the wisdom is essentially what we're looking for, because wisdom comes from love. So I'm going to leave you with that. So much love. Keep it real. Keep it sweet. Om Namah Shivaya.